Welcome to episode 52 of the Achieve Workplace Culture podcast, where we help you find actionable ways to strengthen your workplace culture. I'm Eric Stutzman, and I'm here with my two co-hosts, Chris Downey and Wendy Lowen, two of my colleagues and both leaders here at Achieve. Today, we're going to take a look at leadership impact, and in particular, knowing your impact. So in a word, how are you two doing today as you get ready for this podcast?
Energized. I'm energized. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this discussion.
I'm going to steal Chris's word. I feel very energized.
Oh, right on. Mm-hmm. I need a little bit of that, whatever that thing is energizing. I mean, I'm not energized, but it wasn't the word I was going to use. I was going to use the word just interested.
Interested.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about impact.
Right.
And you both have probably heard, and probably everybody that listens to the show have heard the phrase, leader know thyself. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's the phrase that's out there in the cultural milieu, leader know thyself. But what if we changed it a little bit and said, leader know thy impact? Mm-hmm. What would that mean?
Well, that's an interesting shift because we should be aware, but we don't always know what our impact is if we're not paying attention and if we're not asking questions about from the people around us. There's one thing to be situationally aware and looking and being responsive, but there's also the danger of over-interpreting or misreading things. And so I think thinking about our impact is pretty important because if you're in a leadership role, you do have impact.
Yeah, I think it really changes everything because the way I think about it, it's kind of like the first time you hear yourself on tape or recorded, digitally recorded.
Well, I
guess.
remember the tape.
Yes, I remember the tape too. But do you remember that when you first heard your voice?
Oh, it was so awkward.
And it was like, oh my goodness. But the reality is you're hearing yourself for the first time, independent of what you thought you sounded like. And I think when we think about leaders knowing thy impact, that's about hearing ourselves on tape. And that's really, really important for two reasons. One, so you get the straight goods. What do you really sound like? What's your impact? But also to also get comfortable with it as well. Right. Because it's a little uncomfortable sometimes to actually know. And I think for that reason, sometimes people avoid really knowing the impact. We say we want to, but do we? We think about the impact we might be having, but that's different thinking about the impact versus finding out.
And there's a difference between knowing ourselves, which is, I know what kind of bothers me and what makes me happy, and I know some of my strengths and I know some of my weaknesses. But that's a lot different, actually, in my mind, than knowing how I impact people. So here's a question, I think, for you both and for me.
Yeah.
Do you know your impact? And how have you come to know what your impact is?
Yeah. Want to go, Wendy?
Do you have an
Chris?
example
I
of
do.
that?
Yeah. Working with my mic here, but yes.
Jump on in.
Well, so I think to that point, two questions again. Say them again.
Do you know your impact?
Yep. Okay.
And how did you learn about it?
Okay. So I want to say this broadly. I don't know my impact entirely.
Sure.
But a number of years ago, I had this realization where what I thought I was and perhaps what I was or how I was being experienced were two different things. So I went through my own sort of transformation as a leader where I came to that realization that maybe I wasn't as good as I thought I was. And I started to consult with staff, which was interesting. But when I started to reach out to previous staff, that was really enlightening because by that point, all of the barriers were down and I got to have some good conversations around how was I really experienced. And, you know, what was really interesting about that was I learned two things. There were some definite things that were out of my awareness.
Sure.
And the things I was worried about were often less significant than what they were. And there was a couple things that were very aligned that were, but it was very surprising, I guess would probably be the best way. The only way I found out about my impact is through asking the people that were impacted by it. Now, I haven't done that with everyone I've ever led, but that was, that's how I started.
You just had to ask. And you talked about your previous people you worked with. There's no longer a power differential between you. So you can talk with them and maybe it's a little less filtered.
Sure.
Oh, I mean, they probably care about you if they take the time to meet with you and they probably don't want to hurt you.
Yep.
So a little filtering that's going to happen. But
Right.
it's different,
Yeah.
Sure.
perhaps. What about you, Wendy?
I had an experience that I just thought of, Chris. Thank you for sharing that. When I was in school and working on multiple group projects with the same group. And it was one late night, everyone was tired, and I was the leader of the group. And somebody tired, hungry, wanting to just be done, made a comment on how I was interacting and leading the group. And I felt like I just had a punch in the stomach.
No, yeah.
It was like, it took me off guard, but I, in that moment, thank goodness, was able to receive it. I didn't respond, but we shifted course. But that was the start of a lot of personal unpacking, that you can perceive yourself in one way and think you're doing good things, but the impact and how it lands
Right.
is why it can be wildly different.
Wildly,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And in the moment when somebody says to you something that's incongruent with the way
Right.
you have perceived yourself, how do you receive that? Because you couldn't miss it, right? Or you could
Yeah.
just not accept it.
Sure.
I know for me, like, it's easy to feel in a moment defensive
Yeah.
or even just skeptical, perhaps even, like, really. But if somebody has said it, what their perspective is real to them,
Right.
right? So we have impacted somebody in the way that they are saying they've been impacted, and we have to take that for what it is and realize that has been my impact,
Yeah.
whether or not that's what was going on in my head in the first
Sure.
place.
Yeah.
And whether it was for everybody in that group or just that one person, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Right? Because as leaders, we're leading teams of people that come with different personalities, different perspectives that we have to be attenuated to. Eric, what about yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like knowing my impact is a lifelong journey.
Sure.
So
Yep.
there is that. But every once in a while, I get these little gifts. I've had a couple of those gifts from our producer, Scott, who's in the room with us. At one time, Scott said to me something like, "Eric, you're so stoic." Or it was words around that. The word stoic was used. And I just had this moment of like, really? Because in my head, I'm smiling, right? In my head, I'm not feeling stoic, but what's happening on my face isn't actually always what's happening inside
Sure.
my head. So I
Yeah.
tried to pay more attention to that and go, oh, maybe I'm tired right now and my affect is flat. And because I'm a CEO, when my affect is flat, when my face isn't conveying what I'm feeling, it's open to all kinds of interpretation. Ooh, Eric must be upset, or Eric is whatever. People are going to fill in the gap.
Yep.
And so I need to be present to what's on my face. So that was one gift I received. And I think about that quite often when I'm in a conversation. How am I looking right now?
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting actually hearing that, Eric. I've seen you turn on
Yeah.
in situations, and I wonder if that might be the situation where you realize, and it's not disingenuous, but I've just seen you switch, and all of a sudden there's a facial expression change, and I
Yeah.
can imagine that would be part of it.
Yeah,
That I
could
need,
be,
need
yeah.
to be present here and make sure that's felt, not just
Could be.
intention to be.
Okay. So to our listeners,
Yeah.
so far, have we said from our own experience? What can a leader out there do
Yeah.
to begin to know their impact?
Okay, well, first we started with, we could ask.
Yes.
That's one thing for sure. I mean, that's the best way. And one of the things I want to highlight back, I said I had conversations with, previous employees. That was enlightening. What I have found is you can talk to current, coworkers and employees, but it's how you frame it up that is important, where you can highlight, I want to be, the best as I can. I want to make sure I'm providing the most support for you in the best way. So it's important for me to understand how, here's my intentions, but I want to understand how it's impacting. So we want to frame it up. So I think you'd have the conversation, even when there's a power differential, but we need to frame it up. So I think asking is the first piece. I think, though, beyond that, there's cues all around that we want to be paying attention to. So asking is one, but pay attention to what's going on around you. And in fact, we had a guest, Wendy, when we talked about power, Jeff Coulard was on with us, and he talked about being self-aware is great, but what we need to be as leaders is other-aware.
Yes.
And it's about paying attention to those cues that are around us that might be insight that maybe I'm not having the impact that I desire, which would be something then to dive in on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to dive in on it, because sometimes we can be in a situation where we sense that somebody is pulled back, or we have this assumption that we've had a negative impact.
Right.
But if we don't follow up, we're creating our own narrative about ourselves, as opposed to, I mean, I'm thinking of an experience where I approached someone after, and they said, no, I have a hangnail on my big toe.
Right.
And it was really bothering
Wow.
me. It's like, so they were dealing with discomfort and squirming in their chair.
Right.
And I was reading that as I had said something,
Right.
done something
Right.
that was hurtful.
Right. So you followed up in the moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's happening? I noticed this. What does it mean?
Yes.
Right. Interesting.
You know, it's interesting when you're saying that. I can't help but think about. I mean, this is, I think, a human thing to make it about us, whatever
Yes.
it is,
Yeah.
right? And I think in leadership
Right.
positions, we make it even more so. That even in those moments, if we see something, we're so quick to make that about us. And I really think the takeaway here around know thy impact is stepping out of our stuff
Yes.
and making sure we really understand the perspective of others, whether that's something they're saying to us, and even if they just say something like, you're stoic.
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Help me understand what that means
Yeah, yeah.
to you. Or they seemed withdrawn. We
Yeah.
check it out. Oh, that could be hanging out. Or it could have been that you shut down. So I think it's really important for us to get out of our own narrative.
Right.
Yeah.
And make sure that we actually understand the perspective of those that are experiencing us in whatever capacity that's the case. Yeah.
Because I really do a lot of reading around Stoicism. So
you?
it would be like, oh, I really like that. Thank you.
Oh, nice.
You've noticed I'm
appreciate
very
that.
present. So it means different things, and the language we use, we
yeah.
need to follow up with and
Stoic
explore.
could mean, because Stoic could mean you don't show any expression, or it could mean you're really present, or something
Yes.
like that, right? Is what I think you're highlighting.
Yeah.
Okay. So in your next meeting as a leader, if I want to pay attention to my impact, what am I trying to observe? What should I be watching for?
Well, I think part of it is the cues that are around us. So if we're someone, just say, something we hear from leaders, what impact do you want to have? Well, I want people to feel heard.
Right.
Okay. And for me, that's something that's really important to me. I'll just use this one as an example. So if I'm sitting around a meeting and I'm noticing a lot of the people in the room aren't saying much, that would be a cue that maybe I'm not creating a space or if people speak up, they're not speaking up. So that would be one. Just pay attention to like the people you're interacting with. What signals are they sending?
Yeah.
And if it is incongruent with how you want to be, then check that out in the right way.
Yeah.
Don't create a narrative about it.
Okay. How do you check it out in the right way?
Oh, I think following up. If you did notice something, Chris, you talk about that moment where you go, ooh, what just happened there? That's an indication that we do need to follow up. And I think to rewind a little bit, Chris, what you said is that in those situations when we're with our team, it's not about us. It's about this group of people. And so our mindset shifts to what are we paying attention to? We should always be paying attention to the
Right.
group dynamics.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've found really helpful that I learned when I was an active mediator was to name and ask. I've noticed that 3 out of 12 people have spoken in the last half an hour. I'm curious what that's about. What's happening? So you name without blame, right? That's really important.
Right.
Just name the thing that you're noticing. I've noticed that a fair number of people seem to be taking notes, and yet I haven't seen a lot of people looking around recently. And I'm curious how people are feeling in this moment, or what's happening, or what's changed. So it's a name without blame, and then ask a curious question.
Yep.
I do wonder, though, Eric, if it was us in that situation, we're setting the stage by how we lead the meeting.
Yeah.
I don't know if my impact was such that people would say, well, Wendy, you haven't really designed or set up this meeting well.
Yeah, they might not. Yeah.
that part of the work, the onus is on us to set things up in a way that allows people.
For sure. I agree with that, Wendy, but I think the same applies. If we notice this, let's check it out. Now, there's times to maybe do that in the group setting.
Yeah.
There's times to do that in a one-on-one.
Yes.
Yes, in a
Absolutely.
One-on-one piece. I think there's something that's really, so I like what you were saying, Eric, just name it without blame.
Yes.
And make sure that what we're naming is actually happening and not interpretation.
not
of
your
it,
interpretation.
Right?
Right.
It's like to say, like when someone maybe is looking down at the ground, we could say they've,
They're avoiding eye contact.
yeah, they're disengaged.
They're disengaged.
I don't know if they're
Interpretation.
disengaged. What I do know is they're looking at the ground. So you could say, I noticed in the meeting you were looking down at the
Right.
at the plant in the corner
Yeah.
for the better part of it.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Yes, I just like to kind of focus and think, okay, awesome, makes tons of sense.
Right. Or I've got a hangnail, so I was looking down at my foot. to
Yes,
see if I was
exactly.
bleeding through my sock.
But there's something to add. Just I want to highlight this that so when we see it, let's call it out without blame and judgment, and then just be curious about and ask. On the flip side, when someone comes to us
Yes.
with the gift of like you've impacted me in this way, I like to call that a critical moment in like from a leadership perspective that you need to stop and listen because that's real for them. No matter what we tell ourselves, because we might get defensive, we might get dismissive. They've had a real experience. So lean in on those moments, even if it stings, and say, can you tell me about that?
Right.
Because there is gold in that.
Absolutely.
In that, piece.
And if you can't respond well because you're managing your own defensiveness, you can still thank them. You can still say, I really want to think about that. Can we follow up this conversation so that
Yeah.
it gives you time to think, to de-escalate, whatever you need to do to manage your defensiveness. But in the moment, you can still thank somebody and say, thank you so much for telling me. I really appreciate it. I'm going to think on that.
Yeah.
That's all you need to say at
Yep.
the moment. And then maybe you need to circle back if it's something really significant.
Yep, absolutely.
And then,
Excellent.
and I think added to that is we should always, if we're noticing a pattern of behavior, we should also reflect and think, how am I contributing to this? We ask, we're paying attention, we're following up, but we also sometimes need to do our own work.
We do, but don't get caught up too long in that because I think what happens is it's natural for us to take I'm going to think on this for a while. The moment we notice behavior, until they tell us what that means, we're still guessing. So when I might reflect, I still don't know what that behavior means, though. Do you know what I'm saying?
I hear you. Let me give you an example, a family example. Years ago, I was annoyed that at the end of our dinner,
Yeah.
everybody got up and left, and I cleaned up the dishes.
Yeah.
And I could ask them what that means for you, or I could say, let's make a plan that everybody does around Monday you're on, Tuesday you're on. So part of it was on me because I had done the
You
background
enabled it.
work. So it's both and.
Yeah, I very much appreciate that. I agree with that. But let's not get caught up in the reflection. If this is important enough of us to do it, like reflect on it, how could we? But calling it out is also an opportunity. And again, it's not saying, again, that same thing. You're not going to say to the family, you're inconsiderate, you don't care. You can say, I've noticed this. So I think I hear you on self-reflection, but I think with leaders, we tend to get caught up in self-reflection and think we're doing the work
And we're not
when
actually
we're
doing
really
the.
not finding. So I do hear what you're saying, Wendy, but let's just not get too caught up in that. And let's actually find out what it means from those experiences.
The caution is don't spend all your time in thinking, also act.
Yeah.
That's the caution.
Yeah.
We need to wrap up this particular episode, but our next episode, we're going to talk about what impact do you want to have and how do you get there. So it's going to be a bit of a two-part series here. What impact do you want to create and how do you close the gap between what is and what you want? So with that, would one of you like to summarize one or two questions that listeners should walk away from here with and put in their minds for their next day at work?
I'll jump in.
Yeah, go for
ahead.
it.
Pay attention, be looking, be listening for your impact. If you sense anything, you see a pattern, you feel uncomfortable with something, follow up, have the conversation, be curious, do your self-reflection, what was your part, but move to action as quickly as you can because we do have impact.
I love it.
Thanks very much. That's all for this episode on Leader Know Thy Impact, and we'll see you next time.